Your child just took its first breath in a hospital room under bright lights, with a doctor nearby, a nurse recording the time, and a name already chosen. It felt like the most natural thing in the world. But for 300,000 years before that moment, birth looked nothing like this. Nothing at all. There were no hospitals, no doctors, no painkillers, no clean rooms, no guarantee that either of you would survive the next hour, and yet here you are, a direct descendant of every single birth that somehow worked. Every one of your ancestors made it. Think about what that means. When a baby arrived in the ancient world, it did not arrive gently. It arrived in the dark, in the cold, in the dirt. And the people around it had to make decisions fast, brutal, and deeply human decisions that we have almost entirely forgotten. This is what actually happened. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer-Hrdy spent decades studying mother-infant bonding across species and prehistoric cultures. Her research, published in her landmark work Mothers and Others, revealed something that changes how you understand every human birth that has ever happened. She found that in hunter-gatherer societies, a newborn was never just the mother's problem. It was a community event. The moment a baby was born, it entered a web of caregivers, grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, unrelated females, all of whom would touch it, hold it, assess it, and decide collectively whether it had a future. That word decide is the one that stops people cold, because your ancestors did not automatically keep every baby that was born. That is not cruelty. That is survival mathematics operating at the edge of human endurance. In a world where food was uncertain, where movement was constant, where a mother could only carry one child while also foraging, nursing another infant when resources were low could mean 2 deaths instead of 1. Anthropologist Marvin Harris documented this pattern across dozens of prehistoric and early agricultural societies. Infanticide was not an aberration, it was a calculation, a terrible one, a human one. But here is what most people get wrong about that calculation. It was not cold, it was not indifferent, the grief was real, the loss was felt. Archaeology tells us this. Excavations of Neanderthal burial sites at Shanidar Cave in Iraq revealed infant remains placed with the parent care positioned, sometimes accompanied by what may have been flowers or pigment. Researcher Eric Trinkaus, who spent years analyzing these bones, noted that the deliberate treatment of infant remains appears across the fossil record far earlier than most people assume. Even in death, ancient humans marked the significance of a small life. So what happened when they chose to keep the baby? The very first thing was fire. Not warmth in the abstract sense, literal fire. A newborn human is one of the most thermally vulnerable creatures on Earth. You lose heat faster than almost any other mammal relative to your body size. Your ancestors knew this not as a scientific fact, but as lived knowledge passed from mother to daughter across 10,000 generations. The fire was not optional, it was the difference. Then came the cord. In the absence of surgical scissors, your ancestors used whatever was sharpest, a flint blade, a shell edge, sometimes a reed. Experimental archaeologist Brigitte Roeder has reconstructed these moments using period-accurate tools and found that a sharp flint edge severs an umbilical cord cleanly and quickly. The knowledge of how to do this was not written down. It was watched, practiced, inherited through the hands of women who had done it before. Then came the first sound check. This is something modern parents do instinctively without knowing why. You listen for the cry. You need to hear it. That instinct is ancient. A silent newborn in the prehistoric world was a warning. A crying newborn was proof of lungs, of fight, of presence. Primatologist Jane Goodall observed that chimpanzee mothers respond immediately and powerfully to infant vocalizations. The behavior is deep, older than our species. When your baby cried, something in your ancient brain exhaled. The birth itself was rarely a solo event. Evidence from ethnographic studies of modern hunter-gatherer groups, the Kungsan of the Kalahari, the Hadza of Tanzania, the Agta of the Philippines, shows a consistent pattern. Other women were almost always present at birth, not as spectators, as practitioners. They knew which position reduced tearing. They knew how to apply counterpressure. They knew what a placenta that had not delivered meant. This knowledge was a form of technology, invisible, unwritten, and passed through presence alone. After the birth, the mother did not rest in the way you might imagine. Rest was a luxury the ancient world rarely offered. Within hours, sometimes sooner, life resumed its demands. But the community absorbed some of that weight. Purdy's research shows that alloparenting, the practice of non-mothers caring for infants, is not just common in human societies. It may be the reason human brains grew so large in the first place. A mother who had help could wean earlier, could become pregnant sooner, could produce more offspring over a lifetime. The village that raised the child was not a metaphor, it was an evolutionary strategy. The baby was named, but not always immediately. In many documented hunter-gatherer cultures, naming was delayed, sometimes by days, sometimes by weeks. Anthropologist David Lancy, in his exhaustive cross-cultural study, The Anthropology of Childhood, found that in societies with high infant mortality, personhood was often granted gradually rather than at birth. A baby became real, fully human, fully named, fully grieved, if lost after it had proven it would stay. This is not a failure of love. It is love operating under conditions you have never had to face. The first weeks were a negotiation between the newborn and the world. Breastfeeding began immediately, not as a choice, but as the only option. And it served more than nutrition. It suppressed ovulation, spacing births naturally across the landscape of a woman's reproductive life. A nursing mother in a hunter-gatherer group might go 3 to 4 years between pregnancies. This was not planned. It was biology. It was the ancient world's population management, quiet, chemical, and written into your body right now. The baby was carried always, not in a separate sleeping space, not in a crib placed across the room, against a body, skin to skin. Archaeologist Timothy Taylor, in his book The Artificial Ape, argues that the invention of some form of baby carrier, a sling, a wrap, a fold of hide may be one of the most significant technological developments in human prehistory. It freed the mother's hands. It allowed the infant to regulate its temperature against her body. It meant the baby could be carried while she moved, while she foraged, while the group kept walking toward water, toward food, toward survival. You carry the memory of that in your body right now. When you hold a newborn against your chest and it stops crying, that is not coincidence. That is 300,000 years of calibration. The infant's nervous system is expecting your heartbeat. It is listening for the rhythm it heard from inside. It is checking still, even now that it has not been set down in the grass and left. The anxiety you feel when a baby cries is ancient. The relief you feel when it stops is ancient. The urge to pick it up, to press it close, to not let it go, that is the oldest thing about you. Tonight, somewhere in the world, a baby is being born without a hospital, without a doctor, with only the hands of women who have done this before, and a fire burning nearby, and a community waiting outside to hear the cry. It has always been this way, and somehow, impossibly, it kept working, which is why you are here.